headwinds ahead, blatant double standards of the United States of America, but America continues to push ahead. What are India's options in the short term, in the medium term, and long term? Is Trump pushing India closer to Russia and China? Joining us for more on the additional US tariffs and on India-US relationship, the trajectory, is Ambassador Meera Shankar, India's ambassador to the United States from 2009 to 11. Ambassador, as always, welcome.
Pleasure.
Ambassador, how do you view the double standards? Aren't these very apparent? China and EU import much more oil and gas than India, and yet India is being singled out. Is this about oil, or are there other games at play now that these additional 25% tariffs are coming into effect?
Well, quite frankly, these additional tariffs leave the largest importer of Russian energy, which is China, untouched, and Europe also untouched. Both imported more. China imported more Russian oil, $10 billion more than India in 2024. Europe imported goods worth $67 billion. And there are special carve-outs for countries like Hungary, Slovenia, Czechia to continue to get Russian energy. And India imported less than either of these. So it appears to us that, just putting tariffs on a single country like India is not going to impact Russia's behavior. What it will impact is the level of trust between India and the United States, because it introduces an element of disruption in the relationship. When Prime Minister Modi visited the US after President Trump was sworn in
February.
both countries agreed to set a target of $500 billion worth of trade. Instead of that, we are going backwards. So obviously for us, this is both puzzling. Why has this been done? And also unreasonable. It really appears to us unreasonable, especially when the US is, commenced talks with Russia and has been discussing the possibility of US investments in Russia's critical minerals, energy sector, and so on. Again, targeting India for what other countries are doing is not going to have an impact on
So
Russia.
clearly oil is the excuse, and yet the leadership in America, not just Trump, but look at all the leaders around him. They seem to be parroting the same lines, as does a section of the American media. But look at also all the effort that you put in, or diplomats and leaders in the past between India and America post the Pokhran test, through NSSP, to get this comprehensive strategic partnership. Has that trust been lost for a very long time? 25 years of investment, Donald Trump has thrown it all away, or can the situation still be salvaged?
I wouldn't, write the relationship off entirely. It's an important relationship for India because it's multidimensional. The economic aspect of the relationship, perhaps the most important aspect, is certainly going to be impacted. But you've just had defense talks with the US and a visit by a defense team, which kind of assured our side that the defense relationship continues, military exercises continue. But is it possible to segment the relationship? When you have mistrust in one sector, will it not spill over to other sectors? As of now, I'm sure that there are back channel efforts to see if some reasonable solution can be found. So I'm sure that these efforts will continue.
Okay.
I think the hard reality for India is that it won't, this may not hit our economy so badly. The estimate is about 0.5 to 0.6% of GDP may be impacted, but it hits labor-intensive sectors. So it could really generate unemployment in sectors,
whether in fisheries or textile or gems. These are critical sectors. But But
Leather.
if I may, Peter Navarro, close aide and advisor of President Trump, very bluntly, the words he's using, that their intention is to hit India where it hurts, that's no way to talk about a comprehensive strategic partner. And you've dealt with a US administration. So do you see this as some kind of a tactical negotiating stance, or is there a deeper strategic hostility that's creeping into this relationship?
Well, there is speculation that it could be personal pique on the part of President Trump because
Because
he
we didn't
decides
recommend him for a Nobel.
well, because he decides the policies. It's not an institutional way of decision making. It's more top down. And therefore, I think the speculation that it may be also exacerbated because of some personal pique on the part of President Trump. But, if we look at the past, we've had sanctions after the nuclear tests that we had. India was
Yes.
able to tide over the foreign exchange crisis that we faced at that time by, encouraging NRI accounts and deposits. And the overseas Indian community and NRIs responded quite handsomely, and we were able to tide that over. Uh, I think in the immediate term, India is going to probably wait and watch while continuing back channel contacts. But if we look at it in the long term, neither China nor Russia are in a position to replace the US as an economic partner because Russia doesn't import much from India. We import
Yes.
now a large amount of energy from Russia, but there's a huge trade imbalance. And the
But
same
is this
goes
an
for China.
opportunity? Is this an opportunity
It's
to
an
seek greater access to Chinese markets and to sort out some of the border issues? But why would China want to do that given the situation that they would think that we aren't on best of terms with America? They may want
yes.
to press home their advantage.
Yes. So I think it also, there is still a question of fundamental trust with China. They have to take steps to restore that because it can't be that one fine day, you wake up and say, okay, now you're my bosom friend. There has to be a process which builds up to that. Uh,
Yes.
but they haven't been importing much from India either, with a $100 billion deficit in their favor. So the
And we have a
US has
$40
got
billion advantage with
advantage
America.
with the US, plus your entire, IT and other sectors are dependent on the US market. So in that sense, if we step back, I think it makes sense for India to try to find some biomedia which respects our sensitivities as well, is not completely one sided the way the other agreements that Trump has signed have been. And at the same time, A undertakes structural reforms within India, which would
Yes.
encourage domestic manufacturing, which would make us globally competitive in terms of exports, more competitive than we are today, and which would also look at opening up trade with other partners. So the
Since you
free trade.
mentioned IT, may I quickly just, take a minute to talk about how should we respond diplomatically to senators like Senator Mike Lee, for example? He put this question, is it time to pause the H-1B visa for India? Or Marjorie Taylor Greene, a far-right Republican congresswoman, who said words to the effect, end India's H-1B visas because they're replacing American jobs.
Well, I think American companies have huge shortages and they don't find the requisite skilled personnel in America. In fact, under the H-1B program, every company has to certify that they had advertised the job and no American workers were available for the job. So it will hit America if they clamp down hard on H-1B visas. But it
Okay.
might also help India because much more work would then be done within India in the global capability centers, which American companies have been setting up on a pretty big scale within India. So,
Ambassador Shankar, for joining me here on India Today, ma'am. Many thanks.